Welcome to Football Conspiracies.
I'm Jared Cole.
And I'm Jared Rabinovich.
This week's episode, Mandela Effects in the NFL.
Welcome to the show, everybody.
Yeah.
Today we're going to be starting off with a bit of a segment from J. Cole, and I think you're going to be bringing me all the free agent news that I haven't heard yet, right?
Well, I mean, I'm sure you've heard some of this, but I needed to bring up a free agency right away because Mac Hollins, day one of free agency, he signed with the New England Patriots.
Bro, my heart dropped the moment you said his name. Anything but having him leave the Bills. And on top of that, going to the fucking Patriots. The Patriots are about to take a huge step up next year, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Guaranteed.
Yeah, he will take Mac Jones. Or no, I guess it's not Mac Jones. It's Drake May to the next level.
I mean, like, Drake May and next level sounds a bit like an oxymoron, but I guess we'll see what the Hollins effect has. But one thing I can tell you is the Pats are all going to be playing barefoot next year. Guaranteed.
Yeah, that's going to be their thing. Don't be surprised if Drake May comes out as an official grounder.
Oh, yeah, no questions.
Yeah, and your favorite quarterback of all time, Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Has
a lot of love for him in my heart.
Yeah, he's gotten some encouraging words from Brett Favre to play for the Vikings, to follow in his footsteps even further.
Man, I kind of like the Vikings.
Yeah, I know, but, I mean, they don't have Sam Darnold anymore.
And that's actually, that's really not good. They're already, or I guess during the pandemic, were the least vaccinated team of any NFL team. So to add Aaron Rodgers on top of that, it's going to be a broken system. If Aaron Rodgers' shitty football skills wasn't enough to break them, you know his mind will be.
Well, I mean, the Vikings still have J.J. McCarthy, so, I mean, they are set up there if they need it.
I guess so, but they are set up if they need it, like you just said. Why would they bring in, a completely proven to be broken element into their team? An old man who tore his ACL, a year ago, and then destroyed a team that had a lot of potential if they had a decent quarterback.
Yeah, well, I mean, management for the Jets was never really all that there. But the Jets were looking promising at one point.
Yeah, exactly. The Jets management might not be there, but their offensive core minus Aaron Rodgers wasn't too shocking.
Yeah, the Jets were always, one quarterback away, and they just never had it.
And no, they thought that one quarterback was, conspiracy-addled, lizard-brained Aaron Rodgers. Actually, he's the one who thinks more lizard-brained. I take it back. Yeah.
And then, finally, I have to add that another regular on our show, Kirk Cousins.
Oh, yeah?
He didn't end up being cut before the deadline, so he made his $10 million just for being on the team.
Good for him, I guess.
Yeah. He also had a meeting with Donald Trump to talk about how he lost his job to a DEI quarterback.
I'm sorry, no. You have to run this one back. You can't just bring that up and then laugh and brush it off.
The Donald Trump and Kirk Cousins meeting is a real thing.
The DEI quarterback,
obviously not real.
You don't know these days. It could be real.
Yeah, I mean, it could be, but he definitely did meet with Kirk Cousins.
I trust that Donald Trump has that in him. I don't believe that Kirk Cousins has, the DEI hire talk in him. That being said, I also didn't think he was the type of guy to be meeting with the Don himself, but there he is. His very contrasting his deep orange skin.
Yeah.
All right, so let's begin digging deep into the main portion of our episode. Today, we're going to be talking about the Mandela Effect and the NFL. This is an episode I've been thinking about for a long while. I actually first thought about it before the first episode of the show was ever released. This was on my original outline document that I created for potential episodes. So this has been, really sitting in the tank for a while. This has had some good time to stew. This is going to taste like a nice old scotch, I hope.
More like a Canadian whiskey.
Oh, yes, I forgot. By Canadian, yes. And I guess I don't really want to buy that American bourbon right now. It's 25% more expensive than it should be.
Well, I mean, if you can even find it, it's not on the shelves.
I guess you're right. And also, it's not 25% more expensive, but it will be on April 2nd. Maybe.
Maybe, who knows?
Allegedly. So the reason it took so long for me to actually create this episode, for it to come to fruition, is because I actually found it rather difficult to gather enough content to make sense for this to be a fully fleshed out episode. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, to be honest, there's really not that much Mandela Effect content when it comes to the NFL. And, like, I'll be upfront at the beginning of the episode. This episode might be a little bit more about the Mandela Effect than it is about the Mandela Effect in the NFL. That being said, I think it's well worth a listen no matter what, because the Mandela Effect is incredibly entertaining stuff.
Yeah, it's like, does the Monopoly Man have the monocle?
That's exactly what we're going to be discussing shortly. Don't bring the spoilers to the listeners, man.
Sorry. I'm a big fan of the Mandela Effect.
Yeah, I mean, and soon so our listeners will be too. So after spending nearly a year compiling all the examples of Mandela effects relating to the NFL that I could possibly get my hands on, I finally think it's time for this episode. First things first, we have to discuss what the Mandela Effect is. I'm sure many of the people listening to the show are already familiar, as, you know, this is a conspiracy podcast. That being said, I'm also sure there's a lot of you who have no idea what in the hell we're talking about and why we're so excited for this. The Mandela Effect describes a phenomena in which a large group of people all misremember a particular event or detail in the exact same way. The term was originally coined by paranormal researcher Fiona Boone. I would like to point out that I did not give her the moniker paranormal researcher. She gave herself that moniker. She's a self-described paranormal researcher. I do not mean this in any sort of derogatory way.
No, it sounds like a job description more than that. Just sounds like her title. Like if she was to go on the news, it would say like Fiona Boone, paranormal
Okay,
research.
I actually understand where you're coming from. Like, I feel like if I were to show up on the news, it would say, you know, like, Jared Rabinovich, conspiracy researcher. Yeah. And it would be like, oh, you know,
he researches conspiracies.
No, this woman isn't someone who just, like, researches the paranormal and, like, the psychology behind it. No. She is, like, a researcher of the paranormal, and she believes in it. So, I'm glad we got that out of the way. So, Fiona Boone originally came across this phenomenon when she and many other people all collectively believed and vividly remembered that Nelson Mandela passed away while in prison sometime in the 1980s. For anyone familiar with the history of Nelson Mandela, this was obviously not the case.
I remember living through the 80s and remembering that he had died.
I think you're misremembering living through the 80s, less the Nelson Mandela part, but you know what? I could be wrong.
I've seen it in my past life, bro.
Well, that's a discussion we'll have to unpack on another day. This episode is already too content-filled for that one, so we'll tuck that away. So, in reality, for those of you who don't know this, Nelson Mandela was released from prison in 1990. He then went on to live another 23 years, eventually passing away in 2013. While this may be what did in fact happen, there are many people who swear by the fact that they remember Mandela's death in the 1980s. Fiona Boone, the self-described paranormal researcher who coined the term Mandela Effect, goes as far as saying she remembers the eulogy given by Winnie Madikizela Mandela, Nelson Mandela's wife. I apologize for the butchering of the name. She says she remembers the eulogy she gave following his death, as well as the riots that broke out in Africa as a response to it. When she learned that Nelson Mandela was indeed still alive, Fiona Boone originally wrote this entire memory off, believing she must have had, you know, some sort of misunderstanding along the way. But in 2009, well, at a science fiction and fantasy convention, Fiona Boone had a conversation with a security staff there who revealed that he shared the same false memory. Following this discovery, Boone created a website for people to share false memories and see if there was anyone else who shared the same ones, which is, I feel like,
I
on
feel
the
like
face of it. That's a pretty
a
cool
website idea.
It's a cool concept. I agree. Like, if this didn't go where it went, where I'm about to reveal it went, this would actually just be like a kind of cool website.
Yeah,
that
it's like Twitter for fake memories. That's
exactly.
cool.
Yeah. Like I mean, this was back in the day when like everything was just a forum.
Yeah.
Like, this was, like, pre-Reddit days. Like, today this would just be a Reddit page, and I'm sure it is.
Yeah.
But I digress. Since the creation of this website, the Mandela Effect has grown into a very well-known phenomenon. Well, this, to most casual observers, probably comes across as, a neat psychological phenomenon, which it most likely is. To Boone and her crowd, this is far from the case. Boone and her disciples began theorizing that, no, we are not subject to a collective false memory. Rather, these events did happen, but in a separate dimension. Then, through some mechanism, string theory or magic, depending on who you ask, two dimensions collided, or joined together with one another, leaving a large swath of the population with the same false memory. But the reality which they now inhabit did not have their history play out in the same way. J. Cole, is this all making sense to you?
Oh, it makes sense if you are insane.
Yeah, that's totally fair, but I mean, imagine you've never heard of this theory before. Do I sound like a crazy person right now, or do you think the listeners understand where I'm getting at?
The listeners get where you're coming at. They see what Fiona's up to.
Okay, good, because if you are interested in this at all, and you're not fully sure what I'm talking about, or if you're just more interested in general about people who believe in this theory specifically, I highly, highly recommend checking out the clip or the whole episode from How To with John Wilson, where he visits a Mandela Effect conference. J. Cole, I know you're familiar with this.
I love that show. It's so funny.
The show is brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, anything Nathan Fielder touches is gold.
Exactly. And, like, John Wilson, this guy is just a comedic genius, but not just that. Like, this specific clip, and it's on YouTube, it's like 5 minutes if you're interested. I really, really recommend watching it. This is just an incredible look into, like, the community of people who believe in the Mandela Effect. He really gets, like, a insider view of this. So, before we get into the NFL part of this episode, I thought it might be fun for the two of us to go through some famous examples of the Mandela Effect and see how we remember these. I also think this is going to be an informative segment for the people out there who don't know any Mandela Effect. So I'm going to name them, and then J. Cole, I want you to tell me how you remember these, and listeners, as you're listening along, I want you guys to remember these as well for yourself and see which Mandela Effects you might be affected by, and, which dimensions you might have come from originally.
Oh, wow, okay, let's see if I'm from this dimension.
So the first one I want to bring up to you, J. Cole, and get your take on this is Star Wars related. And the reason I bring this up is because for the listeners who aren't familiar, you're a very large Star Wars fan.
Of course, who doesn't love what happens a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away?
Don't get me wrong, I'm with you. I love it as well. But as someone who is a very big Star Wars fan, I want to know how you remember the most famous line from the movies. Are you familiar with this one already?
Of course I am. This is like the most notable Star Wars fun fact of all time.
Exactly. I thought you'd be familiar with this one. For the listeners who are a little confused right now, I'm sure most of you know all of you know the line, "Luke, I am your father." But J. Cole, is that what actually was said?
No, it's, "No, I am your father."
That is exactly right. And I believe he actually first says, "As father and son, we will rule the galaxy."
No, he says that after.
Is that what he says afterwards? Okay, that would make sense. But the actual line is, "No, I am your father." And how many times have you heard it misquoted? The truth of this one is like a little hard to track down why the mistake was made, which is the case for a lot of these. That being said, this one seems like a pretty
I feel like
up.
It's like just like a more succinct way to like bring about what's happening in one line. Like, Luke, and you know exactly what's going on.
What we're talking about, exactly.
No is just like, it's just a word.
Exactly. I'm not even going to bring up the Berenstain Bears one.
I was
This is like for quick refresher or information bit. there is a big Mandela effect around the way the Berenstain Bears is spelt. That being said, like, I think this is the stupidest one ever, because the Berenstain Bears is a show we all watched as, like, 6-year-olds, and, like, oh, we don't know how a show that we watch as 6-year-old was spelt? Like, that's the stupidest fucking thing I've ever heard.
I like how you started this segment with, I'm not gonna bring them up, but...
I'm not gonna dig into it, because it's so stupid to me.
So you're saying my, like, infant, toddler-ass mind didn't know how to spell enough to understand the difference between an E and an A?
Shockingly, no. I know, it's crazy. It's crazy. This is another one I really, really like. So, Mr. Monopoly, you're familiar.
Yeah, the monocle.
Yeah. Does he have one?
No.
That is the case, but
yes,
every time I think of the Monopoly Man, obviously he has a monocle, right?
No,
but he never has.
See, it's because like the other aristocrat figure is like the Mr. Peanut guy, and he has the monocle. So it's like fair. A merge of the two, you know.
That's fair, but I actually think that one is pretty crazy. Like, this one reminds me a little bit of for those of you who have seen The Office, that episode where it's like, does Stanley have a mustache or not?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, honestly, as I'm talking about that right now, I don't know whether Stanley has a mustache or not.
He does have a mustache.
I thought so, but, like, if you told me he didn't, I also would have believed you. I would be, like, so upfront about that.
I actually have a Mandela Effect for you.
Oh, please, come on.
How do you spell Fruit Loops?
FROOTLOOPS.
Yeah, okay. I see some people remember it being UI because it's Fruit Loops.
Okay, no.
Okay.
I actually thought when you brought that up, you were going to be like, no, it's actually RUI, and I would have been fucking... I would have been freaked out.
No, that would have... Yeah.
That one would have messed me up. On that one, Chick-fil-A. How do you spell Chick-fil-A? The infamously homophobic restaurant that sells delicious chicken sandwiches.
Like, Chick... Chick, F-I-L-A, like C-H-I-C-K-F-I-L-A.
Okay, no, you're just crushing these. This is less fun without you, with you. A lot of people think it's C-H-I-C, like how chic is spelled.
Oh, but then it would be Chick-fil-A.
Yes, that is totally fair. And I think another really funny one is the movie Shazam. Do you know about this one?
Like the superhero movie.
Sorry. Okay, this is a bad Mandela Effect now, because there actually is a movie called Shazam now. But when this was originally made, a lot of people believed there was a movie starring Sinbad as a genie called Shazam. And really what they're mixing it up with is that movie starring Shaquille O'Neal as a genie.
I knew about the Shaq one. Yeah.
Yes. So that one I think is pretty funny. And also I just feel like I got to bring up Kazam as much as possible, because that movie is beautiful.
Hilarious.
It's incredible. Please, bring it back. Make that popular again. I beg of you guys. We need a Kazam resurgence. So obviously I failed to fool J. Cole, but I hope some of you guys were fooled, and I recommend going online if some of these did trick you to like look up some Mandela Effect quizzes. There are going to be some of these that kind of blow your mind. Like a handful of these, I just like, as I was going through them, I was like, no fucking way. And that's just how it is. So there actually is another reason why I thought this was a good time for this episode. Recently, I suffered a Mandela Effect of my own. And I've been wanting to tell you this story, J. Cole, for weeks now, but I've had to hold off because I needed your fresh reaction.
Okay.
So, a few weeks ago at this point, I pulled out my phone and I saw an article from the CBC that had the name of the Ukrainian Prime Minister or President, Volodymyr Zelensky, right?
Yeah.
Zelensky, Zelensky, right?
Yeah.
But no, the CBC had spelt his name with 2 Y's at the end. And I was like, that's so crazy. But I was like, you know what? It's a breaking news headline. Breaking news headlines have typos all the time. This is not that crazy. And I thought, you know what? The CBC are fools. They just messed up. So I move on. The next day, I'm sitting in a cafe, and I look up at the television, and on it, there is a local Toronto news station called CTV they had a chyron up that spelt Zelensky with 2 Y's. And I'm like, okay, this is getting a little weird. Like, I was already pretty confused when the CBC did it, but I was like, you know what? The CBC is a wire service, which means other news stations steal headlines from them. So I thought, oh my god, like, CBC are fools for misspelling Zelensky, but CTV are even bigger fools for ripping the headline from the wire service that the CBC has and failing to take out the typo. Like, that's embarrassing stuff. But then, the next day, I walk past a newsstand and I see a newspaper, the National Post, and it says in print Zelensky's name with 2 Y's. And I was, at this point, like, literally, like, I turned to my friend and I was like, I'm getting Mandela affected. Like, I was put into a different universe. This must not be the case. And I start asking around, all my friends, how's Zelensky spelled? And the answer, to my, like, thank God, like, relief, they all said, oh, it's with 1 Y, obviously. You believe that too, right?
Yeah, I was Mandela affected by this too.
Okay.
Like I was watching, like I turned on CNN and they had his name spelt with 2 Y's, and I was like, hold on a second. But I will say Fox had his name with only 1 Y.
So, are you sure that was CNN?
Yeah.
Okay, that does confuse me a little bit, but I'll explain why. Because I realized why I had been Mandela affected. And the reason I bring up this story is not just because I think it's entertaining and adds texture to this episode and why I'm so passionate about it in this moment, but I think it also does a really good job of explaining why some of these effects come around in the first place. I did some quick research into it. It took, a simple Google search of Zelensky versus Zelensky, one with 1 Y, one with 2. And it explained to me that, Zelensky is a Ukrainian name, and they use the Cyrillic alphabet. They don't use the same alphabet as we do. So translating it is a little difficult.
Yeah.
So some news stations, have decided that their standard is to spell it with 1 Y, whereas others, many of the Canadian ones, have decided that their standard is to spell it with 2. As I was reading all these headlines, they were all Canadian news stations, right?
Yeah.
Whereas most of my foreign affairs news comes from United States stations, which for the most part spell it with 1 Y.
Yeah.
So when Zelensky went to the Oval Office and he started making international headlines and the CBC started writing about him and the CTV and National Post and all these Canadian news sources started writing about him, they started going with the double Y spelling, which is why it's the first time that it ever came to my attention. So it really messed me up because I've been reading headlines about this guy for the past 3 years, 4 years, but this was the first time I ever saw it in this way.
When he visited the White House was also when I first noticed the Mandela Effect happening.
Exactly. And, don't get me wrong, maybe we did move into a different universe where some people spell it with 2 Y's and some people don't.
I was gonna say, that's a pretty pivotal moment in our lives for the Mandela Effect to have taken place, where maybe there is an alternate timeline where something different happened in that White House.
No, I'm telling you, if anything is getting me to believe in, Fiona Boone's version of the Mandela Effect, it is this story. I lived through this, I went through this tumultuous experience. That being said, I obviously don't think that we entered another timeline. I obviously think this was just something I was unaware of, and I think there's a very solid explanation as I just went over.
Yeah,
so,
and you're also a sheep, so...
I am also a sheep, that is true. The reason I have this podcast, we actually are paid CIA assets. Fact. Sorry, wait.
We're supposed to be exposing the other assets so they don't
fuck
see
up.
us.
They're gonna take away our contract, aren't they?
Oh my
Brutal. And because it's been said, it has to stay on. We can't even cut it. The technology doesn't exist.
No. They are forced to listen to that.
Oh my gosh. So
better luck next time.
Next time the CIA comes along to make us their assets.
Yeah, maybe we'll just go to CSIS,
Oh my god, they will not pay nearly as well. But either way, I do bring up this story because not only do I think it's interesting, but also I think this does a fantastic job of explaining to you, the audience, in a very real, tangible way, exactly how Mandela effects come to be. I was super, super tricked by this, but in the end of the day, the explanation seems to be, incredibly benign and super boring. I honestly wish the answer was that we switched into an alternate universe, so I can believe that in some other alternate universe, that Oval Office meeting never happened.
I just think it happened differently.
Well, I mean, I can accept that it happened differently. I hope it happened differently.
That's what
because
I'm
it seems like we
saying.
saw the worst case scenario.
If we weren't already in the darkest timeline. Community reference. 6 seasons in a movie.
Of course. So now that you guys understand the Mandela Effect and why it is so near and dear to my heart at this very moment, let's get into the NFL Mandela Effects. One of my favorite examples, probably my favorite example of an NFL Mandela Effect, and one that I saw people mention like many, many times in my research for this episode, is the infamous Matt Hasselbeck moment when he said, quote unquote, "We want the ball and we're going to score." Do you know about this at all, J. Cole?
Yeah, didn't he say we want the ball and we're going to score, and then he like threw an interception or there was a fumble and they immediately took the ball back?
Just ask Matt Hasselbeck. Seattle's won the toss. We won the ball, we're going to score.
So you got this almost right. Like, you got the general tenor of this moment right. But this was absolutely legendary. Like, this would be worth talking about even if I didn't have a Mandela Effect here. So what happened is this. In the 2003 NFC wildcard game, the Seahawks saw themselves faced up against the Packers. A tense game led the teams to overtime. The Seahawks won the coin toss, prompting their quarterback, Matt Hasselbeck, to utter the now infamous phrase, "We want the ball and we're going to score," which he said immediately after the coin toss to the ref who flipped the coin.
Yeah, we all just heard that.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
No, I'm trying to like emphasize that point in case that's like...
Oh, I thought you were like kind of calling me an idiot. Now I
No,
understand.
because you mentioned it before as like a part of this Mandela Effect. So I was like, we've all heard it. The proof is in the pudding.
Yes,
you know?
there's no questions here. We've given you the evidence. On the first play of overtime, Hasselbeck threw a beautiful pass directly into the Packers cornerback's hands, immediately resulting in a pick six. Or is this what happened? What I just relayed to y'all is the oft-remembered story, but it actually did not quite go down like this. In reality, there was actually multiple drives, not multiple plays, multiple drives between Hasselbeck's statement and his eventual pick six. So the instant gratification that people like to think this moment actually is totally and utterly false.
Whoa.
I know, like even you who definitely don't remember this, we were three when this happened.
Yeah, I guess I'm just really shitty at comprehending my history when I'm reading.
No, definitely not. I learned about this moment many times, of course.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
It's a legendary moment. We got the ball and we're going to score, and then he immediately throws a pick six. That's like, it's the most instant karma moment you've ever heard of in the NFL.
Apparently not.
The karma wasn't nearly as instant as we've liked to remember it to be.
That has blown my mind more than any of the Mandela effects we've talked about.
Yeah, because I actually got you with one today. Hell yeah. I'm very proud of myself. So I actually do think the reason for this Mandela effect and how widespread it is twofold. One, it's far more enjoyable if this pick six did happen on the first play of overtime.
Oh, yeah, obvious.
Right? Like, that would be the immediate gratification that we would all want to see. Like, you'd watch that game live and you'd be so excited, right?
Yeah.
The other reason, though, is that the supercut of this moment, the one that you guys heard the beginning of earlier in this segment, where most NFL fans, certainly myself, likely have their memory of this instant from, begins with Hasselbeck making this statement and then immediately cuts to him throwing the interception. The way this clip is edited may give the impression that the pick six did, in fact, immediately follow the statement, when the truth is, Packers fans need to sit through multiple nerve-wracking drives before getting their comeuppance.
Okay. Huh. That's crazy.
So I like this one. Like, I think it's good because everyone misremembers it, and I think there's such a clear explanation as to why everyone misremembers it. There's no, like, oh, we entered an alternate dimension explanation here. It's just like, oh yeah, like, the famous supercut makes it, like, is a little bit deceptively edited, and on top of that, it's just, like, a better storyline, and human brains like good storylines.
Yeah.
It's just, it's simple.
Yeah.
I like this one. It's an easy explanation. The next one, though, is not quite as easy to dissect. So another of these Mandela effects I saw quite a bit of discussion around is about the belief that the Manning brothers played against one another in the Super Bowl. The original poster of this Reddit thread, who goes by u/1monthpox, which I don't want to get that shit. They mentioned that they only realized this was not the case when, a couple years back, the Kelsey brothers saw themselves up against each other in the Super Bowl, and there was a media frenzy about the situation. This was a very notable event, not only because of the popularity of the two players, but because it was the first time two brothers ever faced each other as players in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Right? Like, for me and you, who, like, our NFL memory is, like, not super long. Like, we don't remember the entire playing career of the Payton brothers, or the Manning brothers.
Yeah, I know well enough to know that.
Exactly.
I don't need a second guess this one.
I agree. Like, for me, it's, like, obviously the Kelsey. Like, I remember that so vividly, but we're also a couple years out from that time. Maybe if before you asked me, have any other brothers played in the Super Bowl together, I would have said no. Like, I know I would have said no. But maybe I would have, like, I could have been convinced. Right?
No.
I agree. Okay, fine.
I'm not giving you the benefit of the doubt on this one.
I'm trying to give reasoning, but I'm also not trying to say I believe in this one. But I am trying to say that this comment had a shit ton of upvotes, and I saw this comment. I saw it like multiple times on multiple threads. Like, this wasn't the only person. There was like a whole original thread dedicated to it on top of like just commenting on other threads. Like, this was not a uncommon belief to hold. Don't get me wrong. Like, they're certainly in a small minority, but enough people believed in this one that I had to bring it up.
Yeah.
So, like I said, this one is
ridiculous.
Yeah, like, it's ridiculous, but it's a little more confusing because, first of all, like, it's much easier to disprove than the Hasselbeck moment, which, like, I had to, like, actually, like, go to, like, the game reel to figure out, like, oh, how did this play out? Like, It wasn't, like, that super simple to figure out exactly how that played out.
We didn't know we were being deceived, sort of thing.
Exactly. Like, but this one's, like, pretty easy. Like, you know, like, after all, it's not that difficult to find both the teams that the Manning brothers played for and see that they never met up with each other in the big game. Like, it's just...
Yeah, I mean, we know that Eli went 2-0 in the Super Bowl.
Exactly, like...
both of those were against Brady.
That's true, and, like, if I'm being honest, I didn't even do research on this one because I was so certain it didn't happen that I didn't need to confirm it, you know?
Yeah. Although, no, I'm kidding. Jared didn't do his research, so
this episode's going to come out.
Wrong.
No, this episode's going to come out. It turns out that we have been Mandela affected, and now we're in the world where the Manning brothers have played against each other in the Super Bowl.
Big brain. Yeah, Eli's actually 2-3.
No, I've universe brain on this episode. With the last one, the supercut and the desire to remember the moment differently both go a far way in explaining why so many people held that false memory. But to be completely honest, no matter how much I rack my brain, I cannot think of a rational explanation for this one. After all, no other brothers, before the Kelseys that is, had ever played against each other in a Super Bowl. So it doesn't seem like the Mannings could have been confused with, like, another set of brothers, you know?
Yeah, like, they are the other famous brothers of our time, other than the Harbaughs.
Which is exactly what I was about to bring up. Like, it's totally possible that the Manning brothers got confused with the Harbaugh brothers, who, in 2012, coached against one another in the Super Bowl, but, like, I don't think this is a very realistic explanation. Like, they coached against each other. They haven't been players for, like, God knows how fucking long by 2012. This just doesn't seem like a good explanation. Like, people aren't, like, don't think about the Harbaugh brothers as, like, the two brother players who played against each other. But they do think about them as the coaches who play against one another.
Yeah.
I did see one Reddit user, u/plain simple Rimo, give an explanation I thought could be possible. And it goes like this.
Eli won his second Super Bowl in Indy, where Peyton had played his entire pro career to that point, but that was against the Patriots. Makes sense why there was confusion.
Exactly. Like, when I read that, I was like, okay, I actually understand where the confusion might have leaked in here. That being said, I'm not gonna lie. That's also some weak tea to me.
Yeah, like, there are only, like, 2 Super Bowls, maybe 3 Super Bowls I can remember the location of, and 2 of them the team played in their home arena, and the other one was this past year. So
I actually, like,
Like
pretty much
Tampa won in
completely agree.
Tampa, LA won in LA.
Like, I remember a
and
few of the ones that we like
New
covered on
Orleans.
this show.
Yeah.
But if I hadn't covered them on this show, I couldn't have told you
would
where they
have
are. No,
yeah.
like the location of the Super Bowl means nothing to me.
Yeah, no, it's nothing. I
completely
mean, like
inconsequential.
maybe this is how they got confused, but
I agree. I think it's a good enough explanation that I thought worth bringing up. Like, I thought this guy had like a pretty smart take, like going this deep and finding this reasoning. That being said, I'm far from convinced. The other thing that the confusion may have stemmed from is that is from the 2019 Super Bowl, where the Patriots defeated the Rams. In this game, while there weren't two brothers playing against each other, there were two brothers both playing for the Patriots, Devin and Jason McCourty. And once again, this explanation seems completely unsatisfying to me. It's just, this one is so bad. No one knows who the fuck the McCourty brothers are.
No,
and no
and
one knows the
also,
fact that they were the
like-
Patriots together.
And why
Like,
would that get you confused for the Manning brothers?
That's what I'm saying. Like, it's not, he's like, confusing the Kelsey brothers with the Manning brothers, like, a little more acceptable. The McCourty brothers, I'm sorry, dog.
Yeah,
No. Devin and Jason are no Travis and Jason. So, on this one, we just may need to accept that a lot of people misremember this instance in the same way. Or, alternatively, we have entered a different parallel dimension, one in which the Manning brothers never faced one another in the Super Bowl.
And, maybe we just weren't from that dimension,
Exactly. I mean, ask Fiona Boone about it. Like, I would love for all the people from that altered dimension to email us and let us know if you actually also felt this one.
Yeah.
Please. I would love those interdimensional travelers in my inbox.
Or just leave a comment below. Like, you can do that on podcasts now.
I'm sorry, what? Like on Spotify?
Yeah, on Spotify and Apple too. Yeah, just leave a comment if you liked what you're listening to. Let us know.
Actually?
Yeah.
Oh, leave a comment below. Yeah, hell yeah. So the last mass instance of the NFL Mandela Effect I was able to track down goes back to the 1999 Super Bowl, where the Tennessee Titans saw themselves up against the St. Louis Rams. Coming into the last play of the game, the Rams led the Titans with a score of 23-16. But the Titans found themselves on the Rams' 10-yard line with 6 seconds remaining. The Titans quarterback, Steve McNair, threw to wide receiver Kevin Dyson, who was cutting across the middle on a slant. Dyson caught the ball on the 3-yard line, but was soon after tackled. With his arm extended, Dyson was only inches away from a touchdown, but the clock had run to 0.
In regulation. It is caught by Dyson. Can he get in? No, he cannot.
And this is how the Rams managed to win their first ever Super Bowl title. So, where's the Mandela Effect here, you might be asking?
Yeah, I was quite familiar with that play. Like, I've seen that play before.
Very famous.
Like, what am I misremembering here?
Exactly. Like, you wouldn't misremember it because you weren't watching the game.
Yeah,
This was in
I guess
99.
I wasn't there.
You weren't alive in
I
existence.
wasn't there to remember it.
That being said, like, do you have any guess of what this might be?
Maybe, like, a reversal in the team. Did he score? Like,
Good questions. No, actually. It's a little bit more complicated than that. It seems as though many people remember that, prior to this play, the Rams were only leading by 6, not 7. This would mean that a touchdown plus a PAT would result in a win for the Titans. In reality, if the Titans had made this touchdown, they would have needed to decide between a PAT and a 2-point conversion. If they had chosen the PAT and made it successfully, they would have also needed to win overtime to win the Super Bowl. Now, I know this is not important at all. Like, this is super inconsequential.
Yeah, no.
And, yeah, like, the other Mandela effects I brought up are much more interesting in terms of their content. But the reason I bring this one up is not the content. It's the frequency in which I've seen it brought up. On the very few Reddit posts there are about Mandela effects in the NFL, this story seems to be brought up in every single one, sometimes multiple times. The comments about this instance also managed to garner hundreds of upvotes, which is quite a different reaction than many of the other comments on these posts received.
So do they think it was 22-16, or do they think it was 23-17?
Great question.
Because I was actually just thinking about that, and 16 is, like, not a crazy common... Like, it's a little bit of a weird football number, whereas 17 is not weird at all. Like, 2 touchdowns and a field goal is
That's
an
actually
easy
a
17.
good point. I don't...
That's my logic thinking about this, you mentioning it.
You're infected with scorigami brain.
Like this is the first time I'm hearing this, and then that is the only thing I can think of why people might think that it was that extra point.
No, it's honestly a good question, and unfortunately I can't answer for you. Like, none of the comments said what they thought the score was. They just all were saying, oh, I thought that they were going to win if they made that touchdown. Like, that was the general sentiment.
I see.
But I don't know. Like, it was just so widespread, and I truly can't explain it. Like, maybe the reason for this one being so, like, frequent is because it was so long ago that people's brains have had the time to rewrite and cement the new narrative in their minds. Like, does that make sense? I have no proper explanation for this one, and I'm not sure a real proper explanation exists or is needed for that matter. I think people's brains wanted to remember this moment as the best possible story it could have possibly been, and that would be if the Titans would have won, if not for being 6 inches short on the last play of the game, instead of it being, a maybe tie if they got the PAT after that.
Yeah, you like the story. I like my numerology theory better.
I kind of agree. I think that's it's a better place to go, but it's definitely not where these people's brains are going.
No, but it's their subconscious is going there. They don't realize that 16 is an odd number, but they know that their subconscious knows 17 is right.
I appreciate how deep you're going and how cooked your brain is. Like, don't get me wrong. It's beautiful stuff. That being said, I think the simplest explanation for this is the game was 26 years ago, and people's memories aren't that good about one play in one game.
Yeah, that'll probably be the proper explanation.
Yeah, I hate to put a damper on your
that is
rain on your parade
of the Mandela Effect.
Yes, 100%.
Brains be weird.
Brains be weird, literally. So.
Well, also other dimensions, but that's for Fiona.
Exactly. Like, if you really want to hear about the other dimensions, Fiona Boone, or go listen to the wackos that John Wilson talks to on that episode of his show.
Actually, I would trust the wackos on John Wilson more than I would trust Fiona Boone.
I mean, Fiona Boone is, like, their leader.
Yeah, but John Wilson's people know what's up.
I actually didn't watch the episode again after, like, I just remembered him, was like, I have to shout him out for this podcast, so maybe Fiona Boone was there and he spoke with her. Like, that's potentially possible. I doubt it, but I would not write away the possibility. So, as we're coming to the end of this episode, this leaves us with one massive unanswered question. Why does the Mandela Effect happen in the first place? If we all accept the fact that we are not indeed moving to different dimensions or merging with other dimensions through string theory or magic or whatever method you'd like to believe, the true and unsatisfying answer is that we have no fucking clue. In 2022, neuroscientists Wilma Bainbridge and Debasri Prasad attempted to answer this question. In this study, they are able to confirm that many people do indeed have confident but incorrect false visual memories, oftentimes about iconic characters or celebrities, and that these false memories can be shared by a collective. They looked into multiple potential explanations. Could people not be paying attention enough to detail was one hypothesis, and they found that this was not the case, alongside many other simple explanations. They could not come to a definitive answer in this study. As a matter of fact, the researchers only concluded that the phenomena of the Mandela Effect does in fact exist, though they have no substantial evidence in either direction as to why it exists or why it happens. Unfortunately, there are very few academic studies into the topic of the Mandela Effect. Because of this, it looks like we may be left in the dark a little bit, if not a lot longer, about the cause of this odd phenomenon. I just hope that we are able to solve this mystery before I'm transported into an alternate dimension where the Mandela Effect doesn't exist at all.
Those sound like the scientists just got like a massive grant from the government, and they were like, you know what, we have to do something with it. Let's prove that the Mandela Effect exists, which we already knew it did because of Fiona. See, this is why we need Doge.
I literally knew you were going to bring a Doge. I was going to bring a Doge if you didn't, so I'm glad you did. That being said, this is literally how science works. And that's what the Doge people don't understand. You have to prove something exists scientifically before you can go looking for explanations about something that isn't even proven to exist. You could observe a social phenomenon, but you have to have data backing that up to say it actually exists.
That is science.
That is science. And yes, this is a boring fucking study. I'm not going to go out here to bat for this. But I am glad that they took this first step so the next scientists who decide to take this on can go directly to the why and not the what if.
In 2028.
If we're lucky.
Alrighty, welcome viewers to the end segment where I bring you something new and exciting. This isn't new at all. It's from July 10th, 2024. But it's a funny article, it's a funny headline, and we can discuss it because it's football conspiracy.
No. Like, I have no, like, that is exactly the point of this show. I don't think anyone's going to have any problem with that or any gripe. That being said, the intro for this, like, I'm holding in every single time. I know, bring it up a lot, but we're coming to something. We're coming to something beautiful here.
Well, I mean, we got a curse. It's been a while since we talked a curse, but we got a curse.
Please.
So the article headline is from July 10th, 2024. So this is before this past season, okay? Why Caleb Williams' Bears shouldn't fear the Hard Knocks curse. You know, the team that went on to lose 11 games in a row?
Yeah, I'm aware. That's a pretty shit take, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, well, the Bears were looking to be not that shit, apparently, according to this guy.
Who is this guy? I came into this season not expecting anything for the Bears. Actually, I expected exactly what we got.
Robert Zaglenski from For the Win USA Today.
Robert Zaglenski?
Yeah,
sounds like an untrustworthy name, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, so anyways, the Hard Knocks curse. The Chicago Bears were told they weren't going to be affected by this curse. This curse doesn't exist for the Chicago Bears. Guess what?
It does.
The curse exists for the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, evidently.
It wouldn't be a curse if it didn't, you know? But this curse goes that if you are featured on Hard Knocks, like as the sole team, then your team won't make the playoffs. Hard Knocks is a TV show where camera crews follow around one specific NFL team during their offseason or during the season. And yeah, and it's just supposed to give you like an inside the look view of an NFL team.
Yeah, pretty similar to many of the other sports shows that we see on Netflix, but this has been definitely a much more long-lived institution.
Yeah, this show has been going on for a while. There was around in 2001 and 2002, and then it came back in 2007 and has been rocking ever since. All right, so it's looked that way as 14 teams featured on Hard Knocks have failed to make the playoffs in that same season.
So 14 out of what?
14 out of 19.
Okay, so that's pretty bad odds, yeah.
Yeah, so one of the few teams that actually has had playoff success while being featured on Hard Knocks was, ironically, the 2010 New York Jets, who made it to the AFC Championship game, only to lose to the Pittsburgh Steelers. But more recently, the LA Rams managed to win a playoff game, although they did lose to the Green Bay Packers in the next round. So, I mean,
I know exactly what track you're on. You're like, you're never going to win the Super Bowl if you're on Hard Knocks.
I mean, it's looking that way. But yeah, so it's it's looking that way. I don't know what to tell you. These teams have been shit, and when they go on Hard Knocks, they're even shittier.
So is it teams that start as shit and continue to be shit, or are there good teams that just go down the drain afterwards?
So, like, some teams do hit their overs. Like, the Dallas Cowboys, like, they won 12 games while being featured on Hard Knocks. So, like, they weren't a bad team. Like, they made the playoffs. They just didn't win a playoff game.
Understood. Okay.
Yeah, so, like, and, like, other teams did too. Like, I know it's not much, but in 2018, the Cleveland Browns were featured on Hard Knocks. They were only projected to get 6 wins by Vegas. They ended the season with 7. So, I mean...
Nothing crazy here.
Yeah, and, like, some of the teams who were projected to make the playoffs didn't make the playoffs is more of, like, what they were going for.
So,
in
like,
this curse.
My analytical brain is kind of going to, what could the possible explanation for this be? And something that is, like, immediately pinging for me is maybe it's easier for the Hard Knocks crew to get access to teams that aren't doing as well because they're looking for more hype or attention around themselves in potentially a period, a couple years where they're in a slump. So I'm wondering if that might affect it in any way. That being said, like, this is just me and me being human and trying to look for patterns where maybe there aren't any, and maybe it is just a crazy coincidence or a curse that all these people are doing poorly after being on Hard Knocks.
Yeah, I mean, if it's any consolation, the last year the team to be on Hard Knocks was the New York Jets, and they managed to lose their quarterback after 4 plays. So
I mean, it wasn't like it's not a consolation in the sense that it makes the curse any better, but it certainly is a consolation to me in the sense that the Jets did shit. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, I like that part.
Yeah, so Hard Knocks curse might be real.
I know, and in that case, the only thing I have to say is go back to the Jets, guys. I think they need to be covered again.
Yeah, are you sure? Do you want to go with the Jets? There isn't any other team you'd rather? Cause
I mean, like, maybe the Dolphins. Like,
I would really like to see the Kansas City Chiefs be featured on Hard Knocks.
They suck. They lost the Super Bowl. They're not even good anymore.
Yeah, bro, don't even let them into the playoffs.
Honestly,
don't even give them a chance. Don't let Patrick Mahomes have a chance. If there's time on the clock, it's too much for Patrick Mahomes. Except for in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, this specific year, in which case he needed a lot more time on the 59. Clock. He needed a lot more time on the clock.
I mean, if you gave him another quarter, he might have done what he needed to do. He was picking it up at the end in garbage time.
I mean, they literally benched their starters.
Yeah, in the Super Bowl. That's crazy.
I mean, it's just a big fuck you. And honestly, Kansas needed a big fuck you.
Yes, they did.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode.
If you enjoyed, please consider telling a friend or leaving a 5-star review. It really helps to grow the podcast.
You can also reach us by email at fbconspiracies@gmail.com.
A special thanks to Blaze for the music.
Join us next time for more football conspiracies.
All right, let's see if this works.
Yeah, do you want to do the intro maybe?
Yeah, sure.